What are you doing here? You're not invited, Mr. Morgan. Chloe's voice rang out in the middle of the church, as cold as a scalpel cutting the damp afternoon air in Nashville. 300 pairs of eyes locked onto me, and murmurs spread quickly. I stood still. My old suit was a bit wrinkled. My hand was still on the silver pocket watch resting in my vest. I managed a small smile, not saying a word in my defense. I just came to deliver a gift. My voice was so calm it surprised even me. Chloe turned pale. Her lips trembled. I saw the fear flash through her eyes, as if she knew everything she'd hidden was about to be exposed. Before it all exploded, before Alex, my only son, understood that the old man he thought was too old-fashioned was still sane enough to see through the lies. I want to tell you this story. It's not just the story of a wedding, but about trust, betrayal, and the justice a father like me was forced to find on his own, watching his son be tricked to his very soul. My name is Arthur Morgan, 68 years old. 3 years ago, I buried the only woman in my life, Lucy. We were together for 40 years, sharing everything: a roof, a small auto shop, and a son we both poured all our hopes into. When she died of cancer, the house felt so empty, as if all the sound had left with her casket on the way to the cemetery. Since that day, the silver pocket watch Lucy gave me on our wedding day is the only thing I keep with me. Every time I open it, the hands are still running, but my time stopped the moment she smiled. She took my hand and said, "Never let Alex lose himself." I promised her, and I thought I'd never have to prove that promise. Alex grew up and became successful, working in the city. I didn't interfere. I just watched quietly as he lived his life. Until the day he brought home Chloe, the girl with the sweet smile and eyes as bright as candlelight. Alex said, "She makes me feel like Mom is still here." I believed him. I wanted to believe him, because it had been too long since I'd seen my son truly laugh. Chloe called me Dad in a soft voice. She told me about her difficult childhood, about her family who had abandoned her. And I, an old mechanic, opened my heart, believing I could help my son and my future daughter-in-law start a new life. I didn't know that, in that tender look, calculation already existed. Today, in this church, as Chloe stares at me with terror in her eyes, I realize the promise I made to Lucy is about to be kept. The watch in my hand vibrates gently. Its ticking is like the heartbeat of a father who slept too long, waking up at the most crucial moment of his life. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from in the comments below. 3 years after Lucy's death, I still wasn't used to the silence of the house. The mornings no longer had the sound of her putting on classic country music on the radio. The nights no longer had the clinking of a spoon against a coffee mug. I used to think I was a strong man. I'd welded steel in the flames. I'd built this roof with my own hands. But when Lucy was gone, I understood. The cold didn't come from the wind, but from the empty space next to me. Alex had already moved to Nashville to work for a big construction firm. He rarely came home. I didn't blame him. That's how young people are. Everyone has their own path. Sometimes he'd call asking, "You eating right, Dad?" I'd just answer, "Long as I'm breathing, right?" That joke slowly became the shield for my loneliness. Every day, I still went to the old garage on Main Street. The smell of motor oil, the sound of the welding torch, they were as constant as my heartbeat. Sometimes I'd think, if Lucy saw me now, she'd smile and say, "Still not retired, Arthur?" I'd answer her, "If I stop working, time will stop with me." She was the only one who made me feel young again, and the pocket watch I carried every day, my wedding gift from 1980, was my way of keeping her close. One afternoon, Alex called. "Dad, I'm coming home this weekend. I want you to meet someone." His voice had something different, softer, like he was hiding a great joy. I laughed, though my heart squeezed a little. In 3 years, he'd never spoken to me in that tone. Maybe he'd finally found what his father had lost. That day, I cleaned the house. I dusted off Lucy's photo on the mantel, prepared dinner like in the old days when we were all together. On the table, I placed the watch with the cover open, letting the light reflect on our old wedding photo. I spoke quietly to Lucy. Today, our boy is bringing a girl home. Maybe she's the one who will take your place in his heart. You see, time always knows how to heal itself. When they walked in, the whole room seemed to light up. The girl had hazel eyes and a smile that made Alex look young again. "Dad, this is Chloe," he said, his voice trembling like when he was a kid asking for permission to go play. Chloe dipped her head respectfully, holding out her hand. "A pleasure, sir. Alex has told me so much about you." I shook her hand, feeling her soft skin, her voice as warm as spring. She sat at the table. She talked about her job as a nurse, about the sick kids she cared for. The way she spoke calmed my heart, as if the light Lucy left was being reflected through this girl. When we finished eating, I saw Alex take Chloe's hand under the table, his eyes full of happiness. I just smiled, looking at the watch. The minute hand moved slowly, a soft tick-tock. 3 years had passed, and finally the house had laughter again. I thought that maybe Lucy had heard it. The days after that night, my house suddenly came to life. Chloe visited frequently, bringing a light perfume like jasmine petals. She talked and laughed with grace. She asked me about the dishes Lucy used to cook, about how I took care of the silver watch. I had never seen anyone make Alex so happy. The boy talked more, laughed more, and every time Chloe looked at him, I saw something like love in her eyes. One morning, I saw them sitting on the back porch, painting Lucy's old wooden chair together. Chloe said, laughing, "Mr. Morgan, I want this chair in the garden so the grandparents can sit together when they have time." I asked her, half joking, half serious, "But Lucy isn't here anymore, sweetheart." She looked at me, tilting her head, her voice as soft as the wind. "I believe the people we love never really leave." That sentence froze me. I looked at the watch in my hand. The second hand vibrated gently, as if in confirmation. Alex started talking about the future, a little house in Franklin, a cozy wedding. I just kept quiet, but inside I felt an indescribable joy. Since I lost my wife, it was the first time I'd seen a real light in my son's eyes. That night, Chloe stayed after dinner. She said her parents didn't accept Alex because he doesn't belong to our circle. Then, with tears in her eyes, she said they wanted her to marry some rich businessman, but she had chosen love. I felt a knot in my throat. After so many years of being a father, I understood loss, and I couldn't stand the idea of someone suffering rejection from their family just for money. I told her, "Don't you worry. You have a family here. If Lucy were alive, she'd hug you just like I am." Chloe broke down and hugged me. For the first time in years, I felt the warmth of a woman in the house, even if it wasn't Lucy. "You're the father I never had," she said, her voice choked. I put my hand on her shoulder, moved, feeling a naive trust grow inside me. That night, when Alex took Chloe home, I was left alone with a cup of black coffee. The watch in my hand ticked rhythmically. The moonlight came through the window, casting a glow on the table. I spoke quietly to my wife's photo. "You see, Lucy, our boy finally found someone who knows how to love him." I closed the watch, hearing the small click. At that moment, I believed that maybe good things were really returning to this family, and that time, even though it had taken so much, could still give back a little peace to those brave enough to love again. Ever since Chloe appeared, Alex transformed. He visited more, laughed more, and even started repairing the old house he once said I should sell to get it off my hands. I'd watch them painting the fence, listen to their laughter in the yard, and feel a relief in my heart. It had been many years since I'd heard that sound. the sound that made me believe Lucy was smiling somewhere. One night, Alex said, "Dad, I want to marry her." The sentence was simple, but for me, it was like a stab of joy mixed with pain. I looked at the pocket watch on the table. The second hand paused for an instant. "Are you sure, Alex? You haven't been together that long." He smiled, his eyes bright. "When you find the right person, Dad, you just know. It's what your heart says." I couldn't argue. I had fallen in love with Lucy the same way. One glance at a town fair, and I never forgot her. I understood that feeling. I also understood that an old man's advice is usually useless when the heart has already chosen. Chloe hugged me affectionately. "I don't have my parents' support, but your blessing is enough." Her voice trembled, sweet as sugar dissolving in tea. I felt myself softening. Maybe it was because she reminded me of a young Lucy who would smile and say, "Arthur, love just needs two people to trust each other." From that day, I took on the responsibility she claimed no one else would. I helped them find the venue, choose the music, order the flowers. Chloe was radiant, hugging me, calling me Dad, so naturally. That feeling warmed my chest. One afternoon, Alex told me they needed money for the deposit on the venue. I looked at my bank account. Then I looked at my old garage. The shop didn't have as many customers as it used to. Material costs were up, and clients were scarce. But I thought, what do I need more money for? My son is about to start a family, and my late wife would surely want the same thing. I sold off part of the garage, took out my savings, and transferred it all to Alex. Chloe cried, hugging me, her tears falling on my shoulder. "I'll owe you this for my whole life, Mr. Morgan." I just smiled, touching my watch, and said quietly, "You don't owe me anything. You just need to make Alex happy." That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in the kitchen, watching the watch gleam under the moonlight. In its reflection, I vaguely saw Lucy's face. I spoke to her, as if in a waking dream. "You know, my love, I'm using our last bit of money to buy our son's happiness. If I'm wrong, forgive me. I just want to keep my promise." The tick-tock was constant in the night, like a prayer for a father who believed that love, despite all the losses, was still worth risking everything for. Ever since Alex announced the wedding, everything around me became lists of things to pay for, checks to sign, transfers and receipts. Chloe wanted everything to be perfect, like a dream. And I, stupidly, or maybe because I loved my son too much, agreed to it all. I'd come to think that if his happiness could be bought, I was willing to pay for it with everything I had. First was the venue, an old estate called the Bellamy Estate, surrounded by flower gardens and old stone columns that glowed in the sun. The deposit alone cost $15,000. I looked at the amount. My heart ached a little, and then I signed. It's the most important day of my son's life, I told myself. Then came the Vera Wang dress, which, according to Chloe, I won't feel like a real bride without it. I remember seeing Alex's eyes light up when she tried it on, while I saw in my own eyes the reflection of Lucy at our own wedding. Simple. No luxuries, but full of love. I signed another check, $12,000, imported white roses, a 3-tiered wedding cake, a live band, a famous photographer. Every expense was like a small knife cutting into my old age. But every time I saw my son smile, I told myself, it doesn't matter as long as he's happy. One day, Chloe stopped by the house, holding the coffee I'd just served her. "Mr. Morgan, I know this has been a lot for you, but I promise that after this wedding, I will take care of Alex just like you've taken care of him." I looked at her, feeling my heart warm up. This girl was too sweet, maybe too sweet. But who would doubt kindness on the eve of their son's wedding? She came closer, put her arms around my shoulders, and whispered, "You're the father I always dreamed of having." Those words made me pause. It had been a long time since anyone had called me father with such a sincere tone. I nodded slightly with a weak smile. For a moment, I forgot all my worries. I just felt loved again. That night, I sat alone in the garage, the place that had been the pride of my life. Under the yellow work light, metal dust glittered like the dust of time. I looked around. The welding tools, the iron frames I had made with Lucy. All of it would soon be gone if I sold the remaining part to cover the wedding. I opened the silver watch cover, listening to the soft click. Inside was Lucy's smiling photo. See, Lucy, I'm still keeping my promise. Alex will have a new beginning, a beautiful one. And if I have to trade my old age for it, then it's worth it. The watch hands kept turning. Tick-tock, tick-tock, constant. I closed the cover, telling myself, sometimes for your son to live his dream, a father must stay awake his whole life. I didn't know that every one of those ticks was a countdown to the day all the dreams would shatter. The next few weeks were a blur of lists, bills, and calls. Chloe came by my house almost every day, always smiling, always knowing how to make others believe in perfection. She never seemed tired, always had a thank you ready, a smile, and eyes that knew how to get misty at just the right moment. I started to think, maybe this is what kids today call destiny. And yet, deep inside me, a small crack was starting to appear. One afternoon, when I went to the bank to transfer money for the catering company, the teller told me that Chloe had already been by earlier and paid in cash. I was a little surprised. Does she have a separate account? I asked. The teller smiled. No, sir. She said she doesn't like using cards. I guess she's just very careful. I nodded, but that answer stayed in my head all day. A young woman like her who didn't use cards? That night I called Alex out to the porch, where we used to sit and drink a beer. Son, I want to ask you something. Have you ever met Chloe's family? Alex frowned. Here you go again, Dad. I already told you, they don't accept her. They disowned her because she chose love over money, you know? She cries about it every night. I stayed quiet. I just looked at the watch in my hand. The second hand twitched, as if it were asking me a question back. And you? You believe that? A few days later, I noticed Chloe had a habit of telling the same story, but it was a little different each time. When she talked to me, she said she grew up in rural Alabama, in a poor, strict family. But when she talked to my neighbor, she said she was born in Austin and lived with her grandparents. She spoke with such fluency, so naturally, that if I didn't have a good memory, I'd never have noticed. One night, as she left the house, I watched her from the window. The streetlight lit up her face, radiant like an actress on a stage. A thought ran through me and chilled my spine. Maybe she's playing a part, and all of us are just the audience. I didn't tell anyone. I'm a man. I didn't want to be seen as paranoid, especially when my son was so happy. But that night, in a fitful sleep, I saw Lucy standing in the garage, pointing at the watch on the table, saying quietly, Arthur, you're letting time pass without looking closely. I woke with a start, cold sweat on my neck. The watch was ticking, constant, but every sound was like a warning. I opened the watch cover, looked at Lucy's photo. She was still smiling, but in her eyes I saw something different, like she was trying to tell me something I didn't yet understand. I sat in silence for hours, with only the moonlight filtering through the window and the rhythmic sound of the second hand. A strange feeling was growing inside me, half fear, half determination. I didn't know what I was about to discover, but I sensed that from here on, my son's happiness wouldn't be as intact as it seemed. That afternoon, it was raining in Nashville. Every drop hit the tin roof of the old garage like a heavy needle. I had the wooden box with keepsakes for the wedding, some small photos, a pair of silver rings engraved with our names, and the Bible that had belonged to Lucy. I thought I'd stop by Alex's place to give it to him, and then have dinner with them, to see if my son's smile was real happiness, or just what I wanted to believe. I opened the apartment door with my spare key, calling out softly, "Alex, you home?" No one answered. The apartment was quiet. Only Chloe's perfume hung in the air. I walked slowly toward the bedroom. Just as I was about to leave the gift box, I heard a voice. It was Chloe's voice, but completely different. It wasn't sweet anymore. It wasn't trembling with emotion. It was sharp as a razor. "Mark, I told you not to call me on this number." I froze. Mark? I'd never heard that name. She continued, her voice low, but every word was clear. "Yes, the wedding is still on. In 10 days, I'll have access to his accounts." I felt my heart pound. Whose accounts? "What do you mean you want more than 30%? Chloe nearly shouted. "The old fool already gave us over 40,000, and the idiot's son doesn't suspect a thing." I went cold. The old fool. The idiot. I knew who she was talking about. My son. And me. I stood behind the door, my whole body turned to ice. All the images in my head shattered. The hugs. The time she called me Dad. The fake tears. This girl, whom I considered my daughter, was planning with someone else to squeeze Alex and me dry. The voice of Mark on the other end was faint, but I heard enough. He was demanding a bigger cut. Chloe let out a mocking laugh. "Don't be an idiot, Mark. When I have the money, we'll disappear. No one will suspect a thing." I backed away, my hands shaking uncontrollably. The wooden box fell from my grip, making a soft thud. I covered my mouth so I wouldn't scream. I got out slowly, every step carrying the weight of the world. I didn't dare breathe until I was out the door. I got in my car, drove aimlessly through the rain-soaked streets, and stopped in an empty park. I let go of the wheel, holding my head in my hands. My tears mixed with the rain. I had trusted. I had wanted. I had given everything I had in exchange for a lie. Lucy, what a fool I was, right? In the rain, I opened the pocket watch. The second hand was still running, but I felt it was marking the rhythm of something different. It wasn't time anymore. It was anger. A quiet anger, as deep as steel forged in fire. I closed the watch cover, wiped the rain from my face, and whispered, "If she thinks she can destroy my son, she picked the wrong man to fool." That night I didn't go home. I just sat in the car, watching the rain fall, and when the sun came up, I had made a decision. It was time for an old father like me to wake up and fight. I stayed in the car until the sun went down. The park was deserted. Only the sound of the wind sweeping through the trees, carrying the dampness of the rain. In my hand, the half-open pocket watch reflected my aged face, blurred by tears. The second hand kept running, as if it didn't care that my heart had just broken. I had trusted. I had loved that girl like a daughter, only to be stomped on with those two words, the old fool. A man cries, not from weakness, but because for the first time in his life, he feels powerless against the truth. I wanted to run to Alex. I wanted to shake him out of this trance. But a voice in my head stopped me. If he doesn't see it with his own eyes, he won't believe it. I drove aimlessly all night, through the lit-up streets. I stopped at the old diner where Lucy and I used to sit every Sunday morning. The place was still open. The old waiter recognized me. He nodded, not asking any questions. I sat in our usual booth. I pulled out my phone and typed in the search bar, "Private Investigator, Nashville." The first name that popped up was Patty Mills, independent investigator, ex-cop. I looked at the phone number. I hesitated for a few seconds, and then I dialed. A woman's voice on the other end, deep and decisive. "Mills, go ahead." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "My name is Arthur Morgan. I need to know who the woman marrying my son really is." We agreed to meet the next morning at a small diner downtown. Patty arrived on time, dressed in a gray trench coat, short hair, and a look as sharp as a blade, but not cold. She sat down, studied me for a moment, and then said, "You're not the kind of man who hires a PI for jealousy or curiosity. Someone hurt you. Deep." I was silent, just opening the watch and placing it on the table. "That girl called me an old fool and my son an idiot. I need to know who she is to save my son before it's too late." Patty nodded, her gaze softening a bit. "I understand. It's a romance scam. Criminals like her usually pick people with soft hearts, people who've suffered a loss." "I lost my wife 3 years ago," I said quietly. "Maybe that's why it was so easy for her to walk into my house like a ghost." She took out a notepad. She quickly jotted down some lines. "I need a few days. Do you have photos, phone numbers, anything related to her?" I gave her everything. The wedding invitation, the number Chloe used, and a photo of the couple. Patty took it, stood up. "I'll call you when I have results. But you need to be prepared. The truth is sometimes crueler than we imagine." When she left, I stayed there, looking at my cold coffee and the morning light filtering through the glass. For the first time in years, I felt something inside me had just died. The trust, maybe. But in those ashes, a small fire began to burn. I will not let them destroy my son. I closed the watch cover, left a few bills on the table, and walked out. Nashville was still noisy, but in my head I only heard a constant rhythm. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Every sound like a vow that this father, though old, still had the strength to fight for his only son. 3 days later, when the phone rang at 6 in the morning, I knew something had been discovered. Patty's voice on the other end was brief, no nonsense. "Mr. Morgan, we need to meet. And brace yourself." We met at the same diner, at the corner booth by the window where I had first put down the silver watch. It was overcast, a pale gray light that seemed to drain all the color from the world, just like my mood. Patty was sitting there, in a dark coat, a thick file folder next to her. As soon as I sat down, she pushed the folder toward me. "Chloe doesn't exist," she said. "Her real name is Sophia Collins, 29, born in Mobile, Alabama. She's been arrested at least 3 times for romance scams. She's got a suspended sentence but is still operating." I opened the file. Inside were photos. Sophia, with different hair colors, but the same face, the same smile. Tender, kind, enough to make any man lower his guard. There was a photo of her next to a man. His face was hard, with a goatee. Patty pointed. "This is Mark Rivera, her old accomplice. They lived together in Austin. Then Sophia took off with his money." I turned to every page. Every line in that file was like a stab in my eyes. Pretends to be a nurse. Gets close to wealthy widowers. Fake marriages. Withdraws money. Disappears. Patty continued, her voice grave. "She chooses her targets very carefully. Men who lost their wives or who have single sons, especially those looking for a sense of family. Your Alex was the perfect target." I closed the file. My hands were shaking slightly. In my head was the image of Alex laughing, radiant, next to Chloe, calling her the light after the darkness of Mom. I bit my lip, trying to stay calm. "And what about this Mark?" "I managed to contact him," she replied. "He's living in Dallas now, works construction, and it seems he's still looking for Sophia to get his money back." Patty looked at me, narrowing her eyes. "What are you thinking, Arthur?" I took a deep breath, looking out at the street, where people walked by, oblivious. "I'm thinking that if he wants to see her again, I can give him that chance." She raised an eyebrow. "What are you planning to do?" I smiled. A sad smile, half mocking myself, half determination. I've paid with my whole life for trusting people. Now it's the liar's turn to pay the price. Patty was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. "I can arrange the contact, but Arthur, Don't let the anger cloud your judgment. Don't worry, I said, closing the watch in my hand, hearing the small click. From now on, I'll let time do the talking. When I left the diner, it was starting to drizzle. In my pocket, Sophia's file felt as heavy as guilt. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time I was no longer shaking. Inside the watch, the second hand kept turning slowly, like the beat of an old heart that had just found a new purpose. To protect his son from the abyss my own trust had led him to. That afternoon, Nashville was drowning in rain. I sat by the window, watching the drops fall rhythmically, listening to the tick-tock of the silver watch in my shirt pocket. Patty had sent me the phone number for Mark Rivera, the man who was Sophia's accomplice, and also her victim. I stared at the numbers for a long time, my heart torn between fear and impulse. Finally, I took a deep breath and hit call. 3 rings, and then a rough voice answered, hard and cautious. Yeah, who's this? Mr. Rivera. My name is Arthur Morgan. You may not know me, but I believe we both know the same person. Sophia Collins. Silence. I heard construction noise on the other end. A drill, people shouting orders. A moment later, his voice, much lower. Where is she? In Nashville. And in 10 days, she's marrying my son. There was no more noise. I thought the call had dropped. Then Mark's voice came back, dry and sharp. Still playing the same game, huh? Just like always. Money, lies, and a perfect script. I know everything, but my son doesn't. He sighed as if he'd just heard something he'd been waiting 2 years to confirm. She told me the exact same thing. Told me I was the only one who understood her. Then she disappeared with $15,000 and the ring I bought to propose. His voice turned raw with bitterness. I was quiet for a few seconds, then said, If you want to see her again, come to the wedding. Are you serious? I've never been more serious in my life. I'm not looking for revenge. I just want the truth exposed so my son can see it with his own eyes. Mark let out a short, joyless laugh. Old man, she brought me to my knees, but I still dream of seeing her face when that mask comes off. Okay, I'm in. We'll do it together. But I don't want violence. I just want justice. I told him the preliminary plan. Mark would arrive at the wedding just as the ceremony began. He'd walk in when all the guests were looking at the bride. I'd give him the signal with a text message. He would publicly reveal Sophia's true identity and present the evidence Patty had prepared. No yelling, no fists. Just the truth, naked and undeniable. Mark was quiet for a long time. I heard the rain on his end, mixing with the rain on mine, like 2 strangers sharing an old wound. Finally, he said, You've got guts, Arthur. It's not guts, I answered quietly. It's a promise. I promised my wife I'd always protect Alex, even if it means becoming the bad guy in his eyes. On the other end, Mark chuckled. She picked the wrong 2 men to betray. When the call ended, I closed the watch cover. The click sounded clearly in the quiet room. In the face reflected in the silver, I was no longer the weak old man from a month ago. I saw a father, a betrayed man, but one who still knew how to get up. And this time, I wouldn't fail Lucy. The following days, I was playing 2 parts at once. On the outside, the elderly father who still smiled when his son talked about the wedding. On the inside, a man quietly calculating how to unmask a con artist. I couldn't sleep. The sound of the pocket watch at night was so clear it hurt, reminding me that every second that passed was one step closer to the day it would all end. I started with the small details. I called the venue, my voice calm. Hello, miss. This is Arthur, the groom's father. We have a small change. From now on, the bride's family will be paying the remainder. The employee's voice was cheerful. Wonderful, sir. We'll update the information right away. I continued, calling the florist, the caterer, the band, the photographer, even the DJ. I told them all the same story, as constant as the second hand. The bride's family is paying the rest. This is their contact number. That number, of course, was the one Patty had confirmed Sophia used for illicit transactions. No one suspected me. I was just nice, Mr. Morgan, the one who'd paid almost all the first deposits. Who would think an old man with silver hair was quietly setting a trap? That night I called Patty. It's all set. In 3 days the vendors will start calling, demanding their money. Her voice was grave. Mark is already on his way from Dallas. Are you sure you can handle that scene? I laughed softly. I'm used to waiting. The only difference is this time, I know I'm waiting for justice. The next day, Alex called me. Dad, Chloe is really worried. She says you don't like her. If she makes you happy, then I have no reason not to like her, I said, my voice thick. Dad, I love you. After this wedding, you won't be alone anymore. We'll live closer to you. I smiled, but my heart ached deeply. If he knew what I was planning, he would surely see me as a traitor. I took out the watch. The cold metal reflected Lucy's face in the small photo. Am I doing the right thing, Lucy? Or am I shattering my son's happiness? I whispered. No answer, just the familiar tick-tock. I closed the watch cover. I wrote on a small folded piece of paper, Wedding, 2:15. When she walks in, send message. Now. I put it next to the watch, like an appointment between me and time. Outside, the rain beat on the tin roof, and I knew that when the minute hand hit the 12 that day, everything, the trust, the tears, and the justice, would explode together. 3 days before the wedding, I sat in the kitchen, listening to the rain fall rhythmically on the porch. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with the smell of old iron from the garage, weighing on my heart. The pocket watch rested on the table, its cover ajar, the silver reflecting the small flame of the gas stove. I knew it was time for the hardest part of the plan, to back away. I dialed my son's number. Alex's voice sounded tired. Dad, Chloe is so stressed. She says you don't seem happy about the wedding. I held back a sigh, trying to keep my voice smooth. Alex, if she thinks my being there will make things more tense, then I won't go. What are you saying? He said, alarmed. You're supposed to be standing next to me. No, son, I interrupted slowly. That day is yours. It's enough for me to know you're happy. I heard his silence for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice had softened. I don't know what to say, Dad. Thank you. Don't thank me. I just want you to be calm. After the wedding, I'll go on vacation for a few days, maybe to the beach. Nashville is just too noisy lately. I hung up, leaving the phone on the table. My heart felt like it had a stone on it, but the calm in my son's voice assured me that Sophia wouldn't suspect a thing. That night, I didn't sleep. I listened to the wind sweep the roof, the ticking of the watch, and I remembered something Lucy used to say. Sometimes, to save someone, you have to take a very deep step back. The next day, just as I expected, Sophia called. Her voice was sweet as honey, mixed with perfectly rehearsed regret. Mr. Morgan, I just wanted to thank you for understanding. I know this is awkward, but I really want the wedding day to be peaceful. I smiled, though I knew she couldn't see me. I understand, Chloe. Every bride wants to be comfortable on her big day. Just consider me gone on a trip for a while. Really? You're the best father, she said, her voice so sweet it made you forget it was woven from lies. Thanks to you, I replied, and may you be very happy. I hung up the phone, sitting and staring at the steam-fogged window. Outside, the lights of Nashville glowed, cars speeding by, and I, an old man, lying to his son to save him from the abyss. In that moment, I felt truly alone, not because I was old, but because I knew too well what was coming. That night, I packed a few old things in a suitcase. Lucy's wedding photo, my black suit, the silver watch. I sat at the table, hastily writing a few lines in a small notebook. Wedding. 2:15. Don't be too early. When you get the message, now, go in. I folded the note, sending it to Mark via priority mail the next morning. At night, I stood on the porch, watching the rain fall, whispering, Lucy, if you're still here, please give me strength. Tomorrow, when Alex looks at me with hatred in his eyes, I just hope you understand I did this, for the promise I made you. I closed the watch, hearing the small click like a confirmation from another world. In the silent night, I understood. When morning came, I would no longer be the kind father I was, but one willing to become the villain, just so his son could see the truth. The morning of the wedding, Nashville was covered in a fine mist. I woke up before the sky was light. I poured a cup of strong black coffee, watching the steam rise and dissolve like time disappearing through my fingers. The pocket watch rested next to the small note I'd written. 2:15, now. I reread it, feeling my hands tremble slightly. It wasn't fear. It was the understanding that from here, there was no turning back. I spent all morning reviewing the plan one last time. All the vendors, flowers, catering, music, decor, already believed the bride's family was responsible for the payments. The money they would demand on the morning of the wedding would be directed to Sophia's phone number, the number Patty was monitoring. When those calls came in an avalanche, Sophia would be confused, panicked, and Alex wouldn't understand what was happening. And then, in the midst of that chaos, Mark would appear, bringing the truth and ending the whole illusion. I knew, to outsiders, it was cruel, but I had no other options left. At noon, I got a call from Patty. Arthur, we verified Sophia's full identity. Her file is enough for the police to intervene. Mark has contacted the FBI in Dallas. He really did that? You're not the only one she betrayed, she said, her voice dry. When the pain is deep enough, anyone wants to see justice. I was quiet for a few seconds. Then I asked, do you think I'm doing the wrong thing, Patty? I feel like I'm staging a tragedy, and the main audience is my own son. Patty paused, her voice deepened. Sometimes, Arthur, to save a person, you have to break them first. Only when they see their own pieces do they learn how to stand up. When she hung up, I sat in silence, my hand gripping the watch. The sunlight slanted through the window, illuminating Lucy's photo in the silver frame. Her smile seemed to comfort and reproach me at the same time. I said quietly, you know, Lucy, I never wanted to be the hero. I just wanted to keep my promise. At night, I took a walk through the old district. Music drifted from a distant honky-tonk. The smell of roasted nuts floated on the wind. Nashville was still vibrant. As if the world didn't know suffering, I watched people laugh and talk. I wondered, if it all falls apart tomorrow, will Alex have the strength to still see me as a father? Back home, I put the watch on the table, listening to the second hand. Every tick was a reminder. Tomorrow, the truth would be told. I put on the black suit, re-ironed the shirt collar, and folded the handkerchief Lucy had sewn for me. In the mirror, I saw an old man with silver hair, his gaze tired but firm. I was no longer the kind mechanic of years past, but someone willing to trade all his honor to save one soul, his son's soul. That night, I closed the door. I turned off the light and whispered, tomorrow, when everyone sees the villain, they won't know how much I love. The watch made a dry click. Outside, it was starting to rain. That morning, Nashville was covered in a heavy, damp fog. I woke up early, as if my body knew today wasn't a normal day. In the kitchen, I made a cup of black coffee, inhaling the bitter, roasted smell. Then I looked out the window. It wasn't raining yet, but black clouds were gathering like a curtain about to fall on a stage. I placed the silver watch on the table. I opened the cover. Lucy's photo had faded over the years, but her eyes seemed to follow me. Today, Lucy, I will keep my promise. no matter how much our son hates me after this. I put on the black suit I had pressed. I tied my tie. I dabbed a little of Lucy's old perfume on my wrist, the scent of memories. Then I left the house, carrying the watch, a phone, and the letter I had written for Alex. When you understand, you will forgive me. The streets of Nashville were wet. The puddles reflected the yellow streetlights. I drove slowly, trying to keep my mind steady, but my hands were still gripping the wheel. Before I reached the venue, I called Patty. "Are you in position?" "I'm with 2 detectives waiting outside. Mark is already near the location. Everything is on schedule." I stopped the car 2 blocks from the Bellamy estate, where the ceremony was being held. The music was faint. The laughter of guests mixed with the sound of rain, which was starting to hit the car roof. I looked at my watch. 1:20 p.m. Less than an hour. I took a deep breath and dialed Mark. His voice was rough, as tense as a violin string. "I'm in the parking lot. Ready. Wait for my message. When you see the word now, go in. Just tell the truth. Nothing else." "Understood, Mr. Morgan. She'll have nowhere to hide." I hung up, leaning my head back, listening to the rain fall harder. In that moment, I remembered the first time Alex learned to ride a bike. Lucy was by the fence, cheering him on, and I was running behind, holding the seat. I didn't know why that memory was coming back now. Maybe because today I was also preparing to let go and let my son fall one last time, so he could learn to get up on his own. 1:45 p.m. I started the car, driving slowly toward the back entrance of the Bellamy estate. Staff were rushing in and out. No one paid attention to the silver-haired man who walked past, his face calm. I walked down the stone hallway. The rain hammered the windows. In the hall, soft music was playing. Guests were taking their seats. I stood by a stone column in the corner of the garden that overlooked the chapel. At the altar, everything was ready. White roses, silk ribbons, the flickering light of candles, all bought with my money, with the trust of a mistaken father. 2:10 p.m., the great door opened. Alex walked in, black suit, a radiant smile. The rain outside stopped. The whole room went silent as the wedding march began to play. I looked at my watch. The second hand hit the 12. 2:15 p.m. I took out my phone, typed a short message, and sent it. "Now!" Then I closed the watch. I put it in my jacket pocket and looked toward the chapel door, where the bride, Chloe, was beginning to enter, with her sweet smile, her confident gaze, not knowing that every second, every minute of her wedding had been calculated by me with the blood and tears of a father. The great chapel doors swung open. The wedding march swelled, met by the hushed sighs of 300 guests. All eyes focused on the white carpeted aisle, where Chloe, the perfect bride, walked slowly. The dress was stunning, her skin glowing in the candlelight, her smile as tender as an angel's. She was wearing a silver necklace, the one I had given her, a piece of jewelry Lucy had treasured. I looked at it, and my heart ached. Alex waited at the end of the aisle, his eyes full of love. The boy still thought he was living a dream. I, standing behind the cold stone column, squeezed the pocket watch in my hand. The second hand made one full rotation, right on time. The door at the back of the chapel burst open again. A hard bang made the whole room jump. Everyone turned. In the doorway stood Mark Rivera, wrinkled gray suit, gaunt face, eyes red and bloodshot. He strode in, his steps heavy, his voice ringing out like steel. "Sophia Collins." The music stopped abruptly. Everyone looked around, bewildered. Sophia froze. The smile on her lips hardened. The bouquet of flowers fell from her hands, hitting the stone floor with a lonely sound. Mark advanced a few more steps. "Did you think you could hide forever? I've been looking for you for 2 years. You lied to me, took my money, and left in the middle of the night." Alex stepped forward, protecting the bride. Who are you? You're mistaken. Her name is Chloe. Mark let out a laugh, dry and painful. Chloe, Sophia, Natalia. A new name in every city. Her real name is Sophia Collins, a professional con artist. Murmurs began to spread through the pews. Some guests stood up. Sophia, or rather Sophia, was trembling. Then she tried to regain her sweet voice. Alex, honey, I don't know this man. He's crazy. But Mark had already opened his bag. He pulled out a stack of photos, holding them high for everyone. This is her, in Austin, in Miami, in Dallas. Here are her real documents and her police file. Alex took one of the photos, his eyes wide. He looked at Sophia. Then he looked at me, because in that moment, I had stepped out of the shadows. Dad? What are you doing here? I walked slowly toward them, my gaze fixed on the girl. Sophia looked at me, her face twisted in panic. You? What did you do, Mr. Morgan? I didn't answer. I just said to Mark, play the recording. Mark turned on his phone, playing the recording of her phone call. The old fool already gave us over 40,000. The idiot's son doesn't suspect. Her voice echoed clearly, flooding the chapel. Everyone was deathly silent. Alex stumbled back, his face drained of blood. Who are you calling an idiot, Chloe? He asked, his voice hoarse. Sophia started to cry, trying to kneel, her shaking hands clutching the dress. I was just scared. I needed money for my mother's treatment. Mark cut her off, coldly. Your mother died in 2017. I have the death certificate. She cried harder, a sob of desperation. But no one believed those tears anymore. I stepped closer. I took the watch from my pocket, holding it up. Remember this gift? You said you'd keep it as a memory of this family. But you didn't know it's not just a watch. It's what reminds me that every promise has a price. Sophia lifted her head, her eyes full of hatred. You think you've won, old man. I answered quietly, my tone calm but cold as a Nashville night rain. No, sweetheart. I'm just taking back what you never deserved to have. At that moment, the back door opened. 2 people in dark suits entered, flashing their badges. One of them said in a severe voice, Sophia Collins, you're under arrest for fraud and identity theft. The sound of the second hand in my watch echoed in the silence. The mask had fallen, and with it, my son's blind love shattered like glass on stone. No one in the room said a word. The wind outside mixed with the strong scent of roses, making the air thick. Sophia was kneeling in the middle of the aisle, her white wedding dress stained with dust. Tears mixed with expensive makeup, making gray streaks on her cheeks. The guests sat in silence. Only the tick-tock of my watch sounded, each beat marking the second her false world collapsed. It's not true. Alex, baby, you have to believe me, Sophia said, her voice trembling. Everything you heard is twisted. I really love you. Alex backed away, his eyes empty. Real love? He whispered. You called my father an old fool? You called me an idiot? Is that how you love? Sophia broke down, trying to reach for his hand, but Alex pulled his away. His gaze now held only pure pain. Mark stepped forward, coldly showing another piece of evidence, the recording Patty had sent. The old man is desperate for grandkids. All I have to do is cry a little, and he writes another check. Sophia's voice echoed through the chapel. That sentence cut the silence in two. Some guests covered their mouths. Others pulled out their phones to record. Sophia looked around, desperate. She screamed, "This is a trap. It's all his fault." She pointed at me, her voice full of hate. "He's just jealous because I got his son's love." I looked at her, as calm as if she were a stranger. Maybe you're right. I am jealous. Jealous that my son believed a stranger more than his own father. But you see, sweetheart, the truth doesn't need anyone to believe it. It's just there, naked as the light. Alex turned to me, his eyes full of tears. You knew. You knew all of it. Since when? For 3 weeks, son. And I didn't tell you, because if you only heard it, you wouldn't have believed it. You needed to see it. A sob escaped Alex, half anger, half pain. He hung his head, covering his face with his hands, and Sophia, like a cornered animal, jumped up, trying to run. But at the door, the 2 detectives blocked her. They read her rights in a firm voice. Sophia Collins, you are under arrest for fraud and identity theft. She struggled. She screamed. She called out for me, for Alex, even for God. No one answered. As they handcuffed her and dragged her down the center aisle, the sound of her wedding dress dragging on the stone floor sounded like a snake shedding its skin. She turned to look at me, her eyes full of absolute fury. You destroyed everything. His love, his honor, everything. You're going to live alone until you die. I just replied, my voice low and grave. What father isn't used to living alone, as long as his children are safe? The chapel door closed, leaving a heavy silence inside. Alex collapsed onto the altar steps, his face pale. I walked over. I put my hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry, son. He looked up, his eyes wet. No, you did what I didn't have the courage to do. Outside, the rain started again, washing away the white rose petals scattered on the path. I opened my watch. I looked at the second hand, marking exactly 2:30. Time was still running, but inside me, everything seemed to have stopped. In the middle of the rubble and tears, I realized, sometimes to protect what you love, you have to accept destroying the world around it. I closed the watch cover, hearing the click echo like the final word of a chapter in my life. After the chapel door closed, the hall fell into a silence not of respect but of shock. The guests began to leave, their heels clicking on the stone, their whispers like wind in a graveyard. The fallen roses covered the aisle, white petals stained with tears and rain mud. Alex remained sitting on the steps, the candlelight on his pale face. I looked at him, seeing in my son's eyes not just pain, but a new wound, one I had created. I walked over and sat next to him. Alex? He didn't look at me. A long time passed before he said quietly, You knew, and you still let me believe in her. Because if I had told you, you would have said I was paranoid, that I was lonely and hated the person who was taking your affection. And you think that was right? You just made me lose everything in front of everyone. I was silent. Inside, every word from my son was like a knife twisting deeper. But then, Alex turned. Tears were streaming down his face. But if you hadn't, I might have lost so much more. I gently touched his shoulder, squeezing it. I didn't want to be the one to hurt you, but there are some wounds that are necessary to save you. Alex hung his head, silent for a long time. Finally, he said quietly, his voice choked, Dad, forgive me. I believed in the dream too much. I looked out the window, where the rain was still falling, and replied, Believing in dreams isn't wrong. What's wrong is letting someone else write that dream for you. Mark walked over, taking off his wet coat, looking at us with a tired but relieved smile. They took her. The police took her downtown. Thank you, Arthur. I nodded. No, I have to thank you. If it wasn't for you, she would have dragged my son into her hell. Mark looked at Alex, his voice sincere. You're not the only one she fooled. I loved her. I thought I could change her. But in the end, I was just a tool. Alex stood up, holding out his hand. The 2 men, one young, one who had already fallen, shook hands. I knew, in that moment, they understood each other better than any words could say. When everyone was gone, I opened the pocket watch. Inside, Lucy's photo was still intact, though time had worn the silver. I whispered, Lucy, I kept my promise. Alex is safe, but I don't know if he'll ever trust me again. Alex was behind me. He'd heard me. He said quietly, "Mom would be proud, Dad." I turned. I saw in my son's eyes that there was no more hatred, just sadness and maturity. I smiled for the first time in months. If that's true, then today's rain was worth it. Outside, the clouds had scattered, revealing a weak evening sun. The light came through the stained glass, falling on the watch in my hand. The second hand gleamed, moving slowly one more step. Time was starting to flow again. But now, it wasn't counting down to pain. It was guiding us both, father and son, toward a new beginning. The beginning of trust, rebuilt from the rubble. When the rain stopped, almost everyone had gone. Only a few staff remained, picking up flowers, cleaning the floor, and the soft music from the band, which was still playing, as if no one dared to turn it off. I told them to keep playing. There was no wedding, but we'd already paid. No point in letting silence reign. Alex came out of the chapel, his face still grim, but not as shattered as before. He looked around the room and then said quietly, "Dad, I don't want anyone's pity. If I've already lost everything, at least today we can eat dinner like normal people." I nodded, putting my hand on his shoulder. "All right, let's call this the Thank Goodness for Justice party." And so the party without a wedding began. The music changed to a slower tempo. A few familiar guests stayed. Colleagues of Alex's, neighbors, old friends. They were awkward at first, but when the wine was poured, the laughter gradually started to return. Someone joked, "I've never seen a wedding end with an FBI arrest." Everyone laughed. Alex laughed too. A rough laugh, but more real than all the ones that came before. I stood in a corner, watching my son talk, accepting handshakes of comfort. Inside, the heavy feeling from the morning began to lighten. Maybe this is what Lucy used to say. Happiness isn't about holding on. It's about letting people see the path. Patty came in late, her coat still damp. She gestured toward Alex as if asking if he was okay. I nodded, and then invited her to sit at a small table. "Your plan was a perfect success," she said, her voice half admiration, half pity. "Justice sometimes needs a shock to wake people up," I replied, "even if it's your own son." Patty looked at me. Her eyes softened. "You didn't just save your son. You saved other people Sophia would have tricked in the future." I said nothing. I just opened the silver watch. The second hand was still turning. You know, I used to think I had nothing left to do after Lucy died. Now I understand. As long as you're alive, there's always someone who needs saving. Mark came over, holding a glass of wine, a tired smile. We should be sad, but I just feel relieved, because justice was finally done. He nodded. "Arthur, you were right. Sometimes the one who was fooled is the only one who knows how to end the con." Alex walked up, hearing the end of it. He put his hand gently on Mark's shoulder. "Thank you for telling the truth." Mark smiled. "Don't mention it. Just remember, loving isn't about blindly believing in someone. It's daring to believe you deserve the truth." I looked at the two of them. An indescribable feeling grew in my chest, half pain, half warmth. Across the room, the band shifted to a slow country song. I poured more wine. I raised my glass. "A toast to Lucy," I said, "for the woman who taught me that true love is never afraid of the light." Alex raised his glass, his eyes still sad but clearer than before. "And a toast to my father," he said quietly, "the man who dared to do what I couldn't." We clinked glasses. The sound echoed in the empty room, mixing with the melancholy tune. Outside, the rain had stopped completely. The Nashville streetlights cast a golden glow on the water droplets left on the glass, shining like tears that were smiling. That night, when everyone had gone, It was just Alex and me in the middle of the grand hall. The smell of damp roses, wine, and the last notes of the band still hung in the air. I sat quietly at the long table, looking at the empty glasses, remembering everything that had happened, and unable to believe it was really over. Alex sat across from me, his hands clasped, his gaze still sad. He looked around the empty room, laughing softly. I never thought my wedding would end with applause and the sound of handcuffs. I replied quietly, and I never thought I'd find justice to the sound of a wedding march. We both laughed, not loudly, just enough not to cry. Mark came over, holding one last glass of wine. I have to go. The police still need me as a witness. But before I go, I want to thank you, Mr. Morgan. I shook my head. Don't mention it. I just did what any father would do. No, Mark laughed softly. Most would let it go, or despair. You chose to fight. I owe you for giving me the chance to close this. I stood up, shaking his hand, and I owe you for daring to face your own past. When Mark left, only the echo of his footsteps remained. Alex watched him go, then turned to me. Dad, I don't know where to start over. I put my hand on his shoulder as gently as if I was afraid of making the wound hurt more. You start by forgiving, not her, yourself. Because the mistake wasn't loving the wrong person. It was forgetting to love yourself first. Alex bowed his head, silent for a long time. When he looked up, his eyes had softened. Maybe. I forgot that ever since Mom died. I kept thinking if I loved someone enough, I could fill that hole. You don't need to fill it, I said, smiling slightly. You just need to learn to live with it, just like I lived missing your mother. We cleaned up the party with the few remaining staff. A young waitress approached, timidly. Sir, you're so brave. Everyone today was saying you were like a father from a movie. I laughed hoarsely. No, sweetheart. I'm just a father who's afraid of losing his son again. When we left the Bellamy estate, the sky was clear. The pavement was still wet, reflecting the yellow streetlights. Alex and I walked slowly, listening to our shoes on the stone, mixed with the constant tick-tock from my shirt pocket. You still carrying that watch, Dad? Alex asked. Yeah, your mother gave it to me. It runs a little slower than reality, but it's never stopped. Just like love, son. Alex nodded, a thin smile on his face. We stopped at the corner, where the wind brought the scent of honeysuckle. I opened the watch, watching the second-hand gleam under the streetlight. We did it, Lucy, I said quietly. Alex looked at me, his eyes wet. Dad, tomorrow, do you want to just go for a walk with me? Not because I need you, but because I want to be with you. I laughed softly, a warmth spreading through my chest. Of course, son. In the end, no wedding is more beautiful than the fact that you and I are still together. The watch ticked in the Nashville night, every sound like a prayer, for the past that rests in peace, for the future that begins, and for the love, even betrayed, that is still strong enough to forgive. A week later, Nashville woke up under a bright sun. The rainy season had passed. The streets were dry, and the trees in front of my house were sprouting new leaves. I woke up early, made coffee, opened the door to let the wind in. The smell of damp earth still hung in the air. On the table, Lucy's silver watch rested, its metal reflecting the dawn. It had kept running, non-stop, a silent witness. I sat on the porch, listening to the birds, looking at the empty chair beside me, Lucy's chair. I smiled, no longer with the same pain. Maybe because I knew this loneliness wasn't a punishment, but proof of a love that existed. Alex moved back in with me for a while. He helped me clean out the garage, wiping down every iron frame, fixing the old machinery. Every so often, I'd see him look up, his gaze distant, but no longer wet. One afternoon, While we were taking a break, he asked, "Dad, do you regret it? Doing things that way?" I looked at my son. Then I looked at the watch in my hand, answering slowly, "I regret not what I did, but that I'd let you suffer so long before I saved you." Alex smiled, a smile more peaceful than the one at the failed wedding. "You know, Dad, I think Mom would be really proud." We sat in silence for a while. On the shelf, I still kept my wedding photo with Lucy. The frame was worn, but her smile was still bright. I said quietly, as if talking to them both, "Our boy's all grown up, Lucy. He knows how to forgive. He knows how to start over. And I do too." That night, Alex took me to the diner on the corner, our old spot. On the way out, we walked through the town square. A live band was playing. The crowd was clapping. Kids were running in circles. Alex bought 2 coffees. He handed one to me, saying, "Dad, I used to think justice was about making bad people pay. Now I understand. Real justice is when we live better, after all the losses." I looked at him, seeing the shadow of Lucy in his eyes, kind, bright, and calm. When we got home, I put the watch on the table, the cover ajar. The second hand was still turning, not slow, not fast, just right, reminding me that time never stops, no matter how much pain we feel. I smiled. I took a sip of coffee and said quietly, "Thank you, Lucy, for teaching me how to love in silence." Outside, the new moon rose over the Nashville sky, soft and warm. I closed the watch cover, hearing the soft click like the end of a chapter. Sometimes a father's greatest gift is not letting his son lose his way. And I knew, from that night on, that the time on Lucy's silver watch didn't just measure the minutes passing. It also recorded every beat of a father's heart who had kept his promise. If this story captivated you, give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click the box on the left of your screen. Thanks for watching.